Alright guys, so like I said, I'm going to go over the entire cost of what I spent to build this entire long block and turbo kit assembly. Like I said, this guy should be good for about 1,000 crank horsepower, if not more. I'm going to go over my parts list in detail. And I got to say, looking at the numbers now, it's stuff added up a lot quicker than I realized. First things first, guys, we're actually going to start at the bottom. Now, I didn't include the cost of a block because I would assume that you would already have one of those. But of course, this one did come from the junkyard and they run like $100 after your core charge. But I didn't actually factor that into my cost. So I took the block and the head to the machine shop, and I had the machine shop actually install all the parts on the head, and all that labor ended up running me $700. So next, of course, is the rotating assembly. I picked up the Manley 2.1 stroker kit from Extreme PSI. I say most of this stuff did come from Extreme PSI, just so you guys know. I'm not sponsored by them, but they have good customer service. They're on the East Coast, quick shipping. Like if I order something today, like in the middle of the week before noon, it'll ship that evening and I'll have it by tomorrow. So that's why I went with Extreme PSI. Not to mention their prices are better on pretty much everything than everybody else. So shout out to Extreme PSI again. I'm not sponsored, just want to shout them out for the good customer service. The Manley 2.1 kit comes with the 88mm forged crank. There is a billet option, but I went with the forged crank just for cost reasons. It comes with the 156mm I-beams, like with the upgraded ARP 625 hardware. Those rods are actually 6mm longer than your factory rods. I got the kit with the 87mm Manley Platinum pistons with the upgraded wristbands. Of course, I had the block board 20 over. So that's the Manley stroker kit, and that was $2,712.86. So of course, to bolt all that together, you need some main studs. For that, I went with ARP, and those ARP main studs cost $79.47. So for the complete short block, that brings that total up to $3,492. Only costs about $3,500, and it will hold a lot of power. But if you're looking to make a lot of power, of course, you need to get the airflow in there, and that's where the head comes in. We're gonna keep moving up. So of course, you guys saw in my other video that I used ARP L19 head studs. Again, I went with L19 just because they got a higher clamping force, and the L19s were $220.88. Like I went with the Cometic head gasket, and that was $91.92. So most of the internals in this head are GSC. Just keep that in mind as I list off some of these things. So the valve guides were $83.46. The keepers were $30.88. The valve stems were $13.53. I did go with the stainless steel oversized valves in this, and they were $243.38. The zero tick lifters that are in here were $179.75. And of course, to top off the head, I went with the billet S3 cams from GSC. They were $603.45. Now, last I did go with 2 AEM adjustable cam gears. And so of course, on my previous setup, I already had one adjustable cam gear, but I actually lost it somehow. And of course, if you didn't know, to run the G4JS head on the 64, you do need a minimum of one adjustable cam gear, and the other cam gear can be a stock Evo. So saying that I somehow lost one of my cam gears, I ended up having to spend another $300 to get 2 brand new AEM cam gears. So that brings our cost for the entire long block plus machine work to $5,572. So of course, the engine's not gonna make a whole lot of power, at least until you bolt one of these boys on. So what this is a Precision Next Gen 6466 with the upgraded HP cover. So what the HP cover is basically your inlet is 3 inches, where on the standard cover, it's only 2.5. And truthfully, guys, I didn't go with the bigger cover for any particular performance gains. I went with it just because it looks better in the engine bay. I mean, that's what it is. You can see I kind of already started to polish it. I'm not done polishing it, but I just stuck it back on here for the video. So of course, if you got a big turbo, you're gonna need something to hang it off of. And for that, I went with this Sheepy top mount manifold. I actually got this during that Black Friday sale, so it was a little bit cheaper. And I paid $1,138 for this. Next, we're gonna go ahead and move to the back of the engine. You see I've got this Magnus fuel rail. This thing has 10 AN fittings on either side. Should support a ton of flow and a ton of horsepower. I actually picked this up used off of, I think, Marketplace or eBay several years ago for about $100. I really don't remember, and I couldn't find a record of it. And of course, right behind that, we have the Magnus cast aluminum intake manifold. Now, of course, this manifold has been dyno proven to increase horsepower, but another reason why I got it was because the factory Evo manifold wouldn't actually clear the fuel rail and the throttle body. Now, this manifold, as you can see the way it sits a lot lower. The runners are straight, and it puts the throttle body a little bit further out, which allows you to fit that fuel rail in there to run those bigger fittings. And of course, you can't just bolt on a stock throttle body to this manifold. It's actually set up to run a 90mm. You have to get an adapter to run a stock or stock size throttle body. And of course, you guys already know that a while back I upgraded to the 70mm S90 throttle body. But in order to run that on this Magnus intake manifold, you have to buy their spacer, which is $82.17. Now, I actually do have a couple gripes with this manifold, because you would think if you spent $1,100 on a manifold, it would come ready to go, but it wasn't, and I'll address those at the end of the video, so stay tuned if you are interested in seeing that. And my S90 throttle body was $229, so that brings our grand total to $9,596. So as you can see, that got out of hand real quick. Because if you're going to make the type of power that you built the engine for, it's going to cost you just as much to do that. The turbo kit, the manifolds, again, they cost as much as the entire long block put together. So of course you could build this engine and run a small turbo, but then what's the point? It definitely has a snowball effect. But even with that said, we're still not done. Like, because if you hadn't noticed, I got a brand new ACO oil pump on this thing. That was $169.71. I went with an OEM gasket as opposed to the little paper gasket they give you, because I don't want to have any leaks on this thing. And that was $15 for that OEM gasket. I also got an OEM rear main seal, which is $34. I had to replace one of the block dowels that got damaged at the machine shop. You know, it happens. It's not a big deal. I guess when they were trying to take it out, they damaged it, and that was $3.96. So I got a new exhaust manifold gasket, and that was $26.95. If you didn't notice over here on the side, I'm actually running the Evo crank position sensor. Now, this sensor is pretty much the same as the Galant sensor, but it's about a foot or so longer, which makes routing it and hiding it a little bit easier without you having to worry about extending anything and messing up the signal. And the Evo crank position sensor, when I bought it, was $115. And last but not least, the one thing that you don't see that will complete the whole thing is I actually have a fluid damper, engine damper to go on the side of. Now, I haven't installed that yet, but I figured I'd go ahead and include it in the price. Like, so once you add all of this up, and if I did my math correctly, you end up with a total of $10,373.82. That number is a lot bigger than I would have imagined it being at the beginning of this project. Like I said, a lot of this stuff really does add up pretty quickly. And that's why I said I might just be an idiot. Like, after looking at that, because that's just what you see here. That doesn't include the car, any of the suspension work, any supporting mods, any of the other work or labor that may go into it. That's just for an engine that might not even work, because of course I put it together. So we'll see. We're gonna cross our fingers, hope for the best. Like I said, I've been trying to do my due diligence and getting this thing together because of how much everything costs, and we still have a long way to go. Because keep that number in mind if you're looking to do a big build. I know on YouTube you see everybody got 1,000 horsepower this, 1,000 horsepower that. It's not cheap. Like, so of course that 10K that I spent is just to make the power. You still need a clutch that can handle it. You're gonna need a transmission that can handle it. Everybody wants to have a 1,000 horsepower car, but it is not cheap. Just be prepared and go into it with a plan. Like, because unless you got deep pockets, this is not something that's gonna happen quickly. Like, so guys, that's what it takes to build a 1,000 horsepower 2.1 liter 4G64. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below or hit me up on Instagram. I want to thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. So I am going to go ahead and show you guys what I was talking about with this Magnus manifold. So one of the problems I have with this manifold, and you can kind of already see it, this thing does not fit with your dipstick in place. So of course right now it's just kind of sitting in there, but it doesn't fit. No matter what way, the plenum is just too big. No matter how you turn it, it is not going to fit. And there's also no provision to hold your stock dipstick. The second thing is this thing doesn't come with a bung or a port for your map sensor. It does have ports where you can thread in barb fittings and you can run an adapter. But in my opinion, if you're gonna spend $1,000 plus on a manifold, I want this thing to be bolt on and ready to go. So for me, I would say that's unacceptable, but you really don't have a whole lot of choices in quality manifolds. The sheet metal intake manifolds, which can leak or actually pop at the seams where they're welded. You have a Skunk 2 version, which is $500, but just looking at the dynos, that's pretty much the same as an OEM. Like, so you really only had two choices to begin with, which was this guy and the AMS, and the AMS is discontinued. Like, so you spend $1,000 on a manifold, and you have to spend another $80 on a spacer if you want to run your stock throttle body or stock size throttle body. When you're designing this manifold in the R&D stage, you know Evos have dipsticks, Evos have map sensors, so why not include it? I guess they figured there's no competition, and if you're gonna run a manifold like this, an extra $100 or so is not gonna be that big a deal.